Welcome to the Knife Show, where we dissect the human psyche and society. My name is Denzel Mensa, and I'm an ENFJ.
And my name is Ming, and I'm an INFJ. And today we're here to talk about, is shame necessary for human development?
We will kick it off to the lovely Lilette, who brought up quite an interesting point as we were ending the last video. I think that this is going to be pretty much the landing plane for us exploring this concept of shame. And so, Lilette, you can lay the ice for us.
hmm So it really is around this idea of core emotions, and that we have these set of emotions that is universal. We all experience things like love or hate. And so perhaps shame is one of these core emotions. And it got me thinking, well, why do we have these core emotions, these things that everyone feels? Um, and then maybe it's actually important for us to experience that it's part of self actualization. So that's kind of where my mind was going. And it's funny reflecting on that thought, that train of thought, because I'd like to see kind of, you guys' perspective on it. Because I think that last time we met, we talked about how it could be very harmful, actually. And there's almost like lethal doses of it, and then there can be mobilizing doses of it, where it can get people to change, and some change is good, some change is bad. So it could actually get people to change in a good way. So we've kind of visited these, or we've kind of talked about these things. So maybe actually, is it even necessary? Is it actually necessary for the individual to truly grow? Is there some aspect of shame that you could use to harness and propel yourself forward and transmute it? And maybe that's what it is it's a transmutable emotion. It's not meant to stay as shame. And perhaps it's actually meant to be transmuted into pride, like self pride of, no, I'm not ashamed. I'm proud. So it's strengthens one's conviction.
Yeah, it's like almost if shame is a train that you let pass by you, but then you allow other motions to also go into you and out of you too. It's
Yeah.
like human beings are a reservoir of moving transitional energy. And so this is the same with our emotions, in that we're not meant to stay in one emotion too long, even if it's joy. Like if you're always happy, then you're not assessing the thing in front of you accurately, because you put like an optimism bias on everything. And you're like, hey, you did a great job, even when that person did horribly. It's like you're meant to pass through and experience a different range of emotions. Um, and that shame, like people usually describe it as a way of getting stuck in a feeling of not not approving of who you are. But if you just experience a glimmer of that, and it's a note in the overall orchestra, is it really a bad thing? And that's a good question to pose. And I think the thing is, it's easy to get comfortable in our emotions. So shame is something very dangerous to get comfortable with, because we can get used to it. We can call it home and mistaking it for our identity. Or we can challenge ourselves if we're in shame, but we want to push ourselves out of it. Then we have that momentum energy that you talked about, Lilette, about transmuting it into something else. And so it's really about, do you soak it into your identity and introject it, or do you take it as a reason to push forward? because there are better times ahead of you. I guess like you always have a mentality of it gets better that helps you push through it. So like maybe you're feeling that shame, but you also have um a something else there too. Like what do you have to mix shame with for it to be helpful?
Right. What does it transmute to? Maybe?
Yeah, what does it transmute to? And what encourages you to transmute in general? Like,
Mm.
why are you more likely to transmute than another person is more likely to take it to identity?
Yeah, it's almost like this permeable um self that you have, right? So you have this external feedback of shame coming in, and then it passes, it hits you, and then you feel it, and then you can internalize it, or you can just disagree with it and say, here's my reasoning beyond, like, moving beyond the emotion. It's almost like the feedback instills, initiates a thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where we take it in differently because you metabolize shame as feedback. I I metabolize shame as a relationship failure, or it's some sort of like there's a failed connection component. So it's not feedback.
Can you
It's
can you dig into that a little bit more? Like, that's so interesting to me. And how you said it's the metabolizing, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's like digesting.
mm. I think it's that shame is a communication that there cannot be a relationship until this is improved of you. Like you're not good enough to be in relationship with the other person or belong. So it's almost like a path to belonging is almost how it feels like. It feels exclusive, possibly, and it's also a lack of acceptance unless you change at your core. So it's almost like asking of you something that you cannot do.
oh,
Because it's almost
interesting.
like some people to change their action, they need to know like from their heart that they want to change, or else it feels like a concession. Like there's a
Mhm,
difference between compromise and there's this kind of thing where you're just acquiescing another person. Like there's
mhm,
cooperation and compromise, and it almost feels like shame is saying I automatically won't compromise. It's either my
mhm.
way or the highway. And then
Mm,
you're given this ultimatum that can be discouraging or demoralizing in terms
mhm.
of I'm threatening you with my respect or the relationship we have. So it is
Yeah.
a relational threat.
Yeah, that is so interesting to me because I actually, had a experience, right before meeting you guys, where there was somebody who, did not like another person and did not like them on a level that they just could not be in the same room with that person. It was just kind of this, oil and water situation, and it had an effect on the other because eventually the other found out that that person felt that way and didn't want to be around him. And so this other person who is like, "Oh gosh, like this person does not like me whatsoever at all. What's Is there anything wrong with me, you know? Like what do I need to change?" Anything like that. I can kind of interpret that as this feeling of what you were saying, relationship, that there's, like, no relationship, you know? Like, someone's just flat out saying, like, I don't like what you're doing. I don't
Yeah.
like who you are." Nothing like that, you
Yeah,
know?
I can't love you the way that you are, and that
Yeah.
in itself is immediately, like, demoralizing, and it
Yeah.
makes you wanna act less.
Yeah, and so is it actually maybe when we're talking about shame, is it even possible to remove it given that there's natural, well, I'm gonna say it, assume it's natural, um, division between maybe very different people. Like there's like kind of different people where it's like, oh, I get along with this person pretty well. And then there's, I don't get this person whatsoever. So maybe it's just a natural element of different people coming together, and then this other group is like, we cannot work together.
Yeah, the old adage, rejection is protection. But
Yeah.
if it's a way to protect yourself from people who are too different from you, and you know you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you do want to surround yourself with people in a way that are going to build you up. And I think shame is a form of pushing yourself towards finding those people. Because I find that like when I felt shame in earlier years, I ended up finding the people who appreciated me the most authentically. So maybe shame is actually a relationship force in between people that is neutral. It's almost like a proton and electron are attracted to each other. And it's like I forget what it's called, but like the forces in between these particles. And if we treat individuals as particles, then shame is simply a repulsive, repulsive force.
So this is such a FITE way of viewing it.
I'm
It's
like,
like
wow.
Is it? Oh,
it's an efficient way to sort each other in terms of the other person's values, and if you can get along with them. And so you can just leave in the TE way if you FI don't agree with their values.
I think Joyce just nailed what I was thinking in my head.
uh-huh.
Because I think that I know INFPs who do that exact same thing. And
Interesting.
even some ENFPs who do that as well. I think that Joyce and I, it'd be funny if this ENFP is watching, but I feel like she was cool enough to where, she'd just probably like see this part and like, haha, they're talking about me. Because she admitted herself, but like even an ENFP that me and Joyce had profiled recently, like that was kind of like similar to like what they do, like what she was saying that she does. And I was like, and it almost made it like kind of easy to be able to be like, yeah, this is an FI user, and this is an ENFP, like, and it's just like, wow. And I guess, yeah, I really don't relate. Like, yeah, that's so interesting. It's like, well, because then it just comes into, so would you, okay, my mind is swirling, but pretty much just thinking like, so in a way, are we saying that like, are you saying that you feel like you mainly use shame to repel and attract as a kind of like simplified way to put it, or would you say like not necessarily?
Ooh, wielding shame. Like using it as a tool. That's kind of this next level. Maybe it comes from, or maybe our differing perspectives come from a place of one is being used and the other is a natural occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, I don't see it as like I see it as like a byproduct, of, oh, yeah, I don't agree with that, but that's okay. But we're not going to mix. Um, and you might feel bad that we don't get along, but that's not inherently a bad thing. Like we can kind of exist in the same place, but we might be better in a group setting where it's not just two people who are feeling that repelling force between each other, that it might take a third person to bring us together. So I see it as this byproduct of just two different people uh, not agreeing with the other, and it's not necessarily wielded. I think I disagree with it being wielded, but I think we do it on accident also. We can emit shame just by not agreeing with somebody, enough for them to wonder if there's anything like why they're, different. And but yeah, there's nothing wrong with being different though. It's a strange thing to digest because as a social creature, it's kind of scary being different in a way. And there's this fear negative energy attached to it. And it's almost unwanted, But here I'm saying to be comfortable with it.
That's interesting. You're able to use it to more efficiently weed out people. Like for me, I find shame can be so jarring in the moment that it actually leaves
Yeah, yeah.
me a little bit speechless. That's why it
Yeah,
demobilizes me. I have to like recover from the shock of what
got
the
it.
other
Okay, yeah.
person said.
Yeah, yeah, where it's like I see it as very valuable feedback of Bub.
I'm not mocking you. I'm not mocking you. I'm just like, wow. It's really just making me laugh because again, like we were just talking about, I just did a whole video on NI for my series, and it's definitely the longest video out of all of the 8. So all the hating that I did on NI, and then there you go. But it in that video, I spent most of the time talking about paradigm shifting, and it's like right now you're just giving me such a almost huge paradigm, colossal paradigm shift of like, Denzel, try to imagine your life now. Every single area where you saw shame, if you transmutated it the way that Lilette did, or the times when people were trying to use shame to do the same thing towards you. And it's like, so I'm just like stuck now, just thinking like, what kind of alternate reality would I be in if I like had recognized that these people were probably Lilettes in my life that were using shame in a very different way than what I was perceiving it to be. And would
Yeah,
anything
it's
have
almost
changed? I
like
don't know.
maybe like this like confrontation, this necessary confrontation
Mm.
of attitudes, of differing attitudes, almost like the confrontation that we experience within ourselves. What do we it's likened to that, where do we dislike that we're not just all like Ferris material pointed in the same direction, every single little bit? No, usually like everyone relates to the devil on the shoulder and the angel on the other side. um because there's this like these warring factions within even yourself. And that when we talked about like internal shame, that we can produce our own internal shame. And yeah, so there's like this confrontation that happens. And um is it bad? No, I think it is a call to action. It's what do you stand for, what do you think? Because sometimes we go through life thinking that everyone does things the same way, and then you meet that person who does not, and maybe they make you feel bad. Like
Mm.
I was on a dog walk once, and um this lady was like, "Oh, can you explain to me like why you're training your dog this way?" And maybe like parents will relate to this too. Like, "Oh, you know, why are you like you should do this for with your kid." And they might be meaning it in a helpful way, but like, and so you might feel shame. But it's just this difference. It's a variance that you're experiencing. And so shame is the byproduct of that variance that is happening. And it's a very natural occurrence. And it wouldn't be there if that other person was the same as you. But we experience these kind of forces within ourselves also. But it's not necessarily this bad thing. It's like, I think there's too much of anything is a bad thing, but because it's naturally produced, then I don't think it's inherently bad.
Mm. Yeah, and it's also to communicate a I think shame is good at communicating disappointment you have in the other person. Like, let's say if you see the other person as an extension of who you are and they do something that's out of alignment with what you would expect them to care about, I'll give you an example of TEFI shame. So my dad's an ISTJ, and he wants me to print out photos of myself to send to my grandmother because she's like gonna die. She's very ill. And so the way that he's been trying to get me to do that is like bringing it to shame immediately, like no other emotion, just like, how dare you not care about this? Like, shame on you. Print these out immediately. Have you no morals? Or like it's kind of like stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, this is so out
That's
of nowhere.
intense. That's
Yeah,
actually
that's
very intense.
ridiculous.
Well,
Like,
it,
it's almost like he's telling you to feel that you should be just like him, you know?
yeah, and in a way, it can be off-putting in that it doesn't make you want to do it. It just makes you want to. Well, it makes you want to do it so he'll stop talking, but it doesn't really encourage you to have good morals from the inside out. It's like a but I'm wondering if I would prefer that over I've had some FPs in my life with they have higher FI, and what they'll do is it's actually if an FI user is in their FI and they don't care about you, they'll just like go away without even letting you know what upset them, but they were sensitive about something. So would I prefer someone screaming their morals at me and values, or would I prefer them not doing anything and just leaving without clarifying? And so in some way I do admire the approach of actually communicating how you feel, because at least it gives a chance to resolve it, whatever relational tension there is.
That's
So
interesting you say that, yeah. It gives it an opportunity to resolve the relationship variance that is happening. Because it yeah, because like, the ghosting bit,
yeah.
uh,
Because while the TE user might be shocked that, like, oh, this is happening, like both parties are shocked during a conflict of shame. But
mhm,
it, they're shocked, but they still want to remain in connection with you. So it's almost like there's something trampled over. So
mm,
because like FI can be so inarticulate, you have to scream it before you can articulate what you actually really mean. It's
mhm,
like
yeah.
a barking chihuahua. You're like it's like if you step on a snake's tail, it'll like have an extreme reaction, but then it'll calm down after a while. It needs to get it out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll forget later and it won't actually
Mm.
tell you. So it's either I yell at you now or I keep it to myself and let the relationship die and then just leave you.
Yeah, right, right, yeah.
I think, yeah, I'm really having a few epiphanies here because something like that did happen even just last week. Um, I did a video on Just Call Me John's YouTube channel with him, and we were breaking down the dark side of the functions when it comes down to the Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef. Joyce, we actually talked about you in the video. Did you already see it?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I thought that you were like nodding because you already saw what we said about you, and it was funny. But anyway, um, so in the comment section, because John's channel, John is an INTJ, and John has a lot of INTJ subscribers. And in the comment section, this INTJ just like came in and was like, I don't even remember the exact thing that they were saying. They were just like talking about me, like my takes in the video, and like they sounded like so like aggressive. I couldn't even finish watching the video because what your guest is saying is this, that, and everything. And I commented, like, I actually felt a little bit bad. Like, I was like, dang, like, was my takes like really like that left field that like this person couldn't even finish watching the video? Like, that's kind of crazy. And like not like crazy for them. Like, I was really thinking, man, like I hope that I didn't ruin this experience for so many other people. Like, I know that I probably don't have like a popular take with this, but whatever. And so I commented saying like, I'm really sorry that I like ruined the rest of your watching experience. I was really just, stating that it was like my opinion because of this, that. But I am aware that my opinion is like, unpopular, and I can also see the vantage point like the other people have and stuff like that. Even my friend, my ISTP friend, told me just the past week, like, nah, Denzel needs to be like this. And I was like, I get it, but it's just not the opinion. It's just not the perspective that I have. But that's fair. And then after that, like, the guy responded back, or girl, and was like, like being all kind about it, and we just exchanged our opinions in a nice, kind manner, and they were like apologizing, like, yeah, sorry if I came at you a little bit hard, and this, that. And at the end, we both were like, yeah, it's all love. And like the comment thread is still there, like you can go see, like, and it was just so funny to me because after, like, when I saw, like, oh, this is actually a really nice person, then I was like thinking to myself, like, man, but they started off so like, and I'm like, imagine if I just came back with like the same energy, like, then we would have just both been like, yeah, well, your opinion is invalid, and boom, boom. And we would both think that the other person is just a foolish, imbecile of some sort. And yeah, and so I'm like, but now Joyce is saying, like, yeah, some FIT users, like, they have to like bark and do all that before they're like, no, what I'm really trying to say is like, okay, well, thank you. All right, well, cool.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
If I'm understanding correctly, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
that was like so pure. Maybe there's rules of engagement then, in the same way that we don't want to ban anger.
Yeah, we definitely
want to express it, but there's a good way to express it, and there's not a great way to express it. Like in the case of like Joyce's father, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The way that he went about expressing that could have been different, and that's definitely a skill that you could learn. You can definitely acquire that in the same way that we pick up these kinds of social engagements. But it is, when we first started this series, I ended up agreeing with you, Denzel, with no, actually, like the way that it is utilized right now is not great. The rules of engagement is terrible.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, why is it so terrible? Is it because shame has been around for a while, and same thing with anger, like it's been around, but it seems like there's more restraint, with social restraint, with things like anger, like, oh, don't, that's immature of you, you didn't need that, it was over the top, that was way too much. So maybe it's the same thing with shame, that like, you shouldn't wield it against someone. You shouldn't want them to feel shame. Shame is already going to be a natural part of the process. They're going to feel it if you're disagreeing with them in a way that makes them feel shame. But you don't have to go the step forward or further, and almost like in a violent way, it already is hurting the person, so you're just kind of gonna drill deeper because you just dislike it so much, there's so much disgust or something, that you're just gonna push it in even further, and I think that's uncalled for. That's not appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think sometimes shame, we believe that the other person isn't listening to us. If only they heard our brilliant reasoning, that they would maybe change their behavior. Just like when you meet someone who's depressed, it's kind of like, have you tried being happier? It's kind of like, it's like, I need to say that louder so that if only it finally lands in your brain cells, then you will get the importance of this. Otherwise, it feels like a life or death situation when a value is trampled upon, because it almost feels like the other person is missing the point of that situation. And
Yeah, yeah, like an impasse. You're passing each other. You're not even making any relationship connection. There's no growth. It's like just like a complete miss.
yeah, and if you just show them their blind spot, then they can rewire it in a way.
Interesting. Yeah, I would invite people who disagree with someone and perhaps like making that person feel ashamed of something to also check themselves. I think it does help sometimes when you, the person who is feeling shame picks up the skill of pushing back, like what you did, Denzel, where you push back and you explained yourself.
Mm,
And because there could be like a great relationship there. There's a satisfaction of gaining understanding of another. And that's
mm.
it's pointing out this opportunity of like ding ding ding, like a light bulb turning on. There's your opportunity. And being comfortable with being able to do exactly what you did, Denzel. And then you
Mm.
walk away and you're like, oh, what a nice guy.
Yeah, that's the magic that Denzel has on people. He's just, like,
Magic.
so
Yeah.
charismatic and likable. There's
Yeah.
I think it's also when we shame people, we believe, "Oh, you're not doing this, therefore you must be a horrible person." And then when we actually talk with them and we realize they're not being a horrible person, we start to
Mhm.
feel a little silly for assuming that they were a horrible person, and then we're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you're cool. You know what? You're not as bad as I thought you were."
Yeah. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, I get you now. I get where you're coming from. Yeah, that makes sense. I like thought you were straight up evil before, but now, you know, like a little less evil. But I'm just kidding. But yeah,
Yeah. I think that's what it is. Yeah, it's
yeah.
like I thought you were just stupid, or I thought you were just
I
evil, or
thought you were
whatever. I thought you were immoral. But
right.
then it's like,
Right.
oh, okay, no. Like even if I disagree with you, I can see how your perspective makes sense. And
Yeah.
I guess for me, I sometimes, yeah, no, it depends. I was gonna say like I think I often feel that way. I feel like I can often see other people's perspectives, um, and even be like, oh yeah, no, it makes sense. But I think that even if it doesn't make sense, then I'm not really gonna shame them. Like I'm just like, okay, well, that's you.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
you. And then I do the same thing that you do, where it's just like, all right, well, this is just not the type of person that I feel like I'd probably want to like have in my inner circle in this way.
Hmm.
Like, oh, you're obsessed with your partner, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but you are one of those people who either when you're single, then all you can think about is getting a partner. And so I already know that when you get a partner, you're going to obsess over that partner so much that y'all are going to become like one person. And it's like I almost can't even talk to you or hang out with you without either your partner being there. Which I'm not trying to say I'm hiding away from your partner, but it's like, can you be your own individual self? Or like I'm not even going to be hearing from you anymore because now you're just so your partner is just your whole life.
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna shame you for that. It's just like, all
Hmm.
right, let me not be friends with you anymore.
Hmm.
Because all you're gonna do is just obsess over your partner and everything like that. And you're gonna leave eventually. And then when you and your partner break up, if you and your partner break up, I'm
Hmm.
not wishing that on them, but like if y'all do,
Hmm.
then you're gonna come back and and then now you're gonna want my attention all the time or whatever. And it's like I don't even want to give it to you because it's only gonna be until you find yourself a new partner. And even while I'm giving you this attention, you're really only using that time to vent about the partner that you just had until you find the new partner, and then cycle continues. And if the cycle ends, it's because now you found a partner that you're sticking with, and you're not coming back to me anymore.
Hmm. I can
So
see.
I'm not gonna shame you. I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
like, I'm not giving my energy to you.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. And I'm starting to see like your perspective there with well, is it like really necessary like these kind of confrontations and outbursts, like
And
perhaps we could be more like reserved about them, you know.
The way I'm seeing it is that it probably is necessary for, I'm not saying this in a rude way, but people like you, as in like maybe FI users, potentially. It could be an FI thing in that sense. I don't know if FI users are watching, comment and let us know. But it could be necessary
I was
because
kind of thinking the same thing too.
yeah,
So
because
yeah,
like
I
for
wonder if
me, I
it's like
usually look at
FI
other
thing.
people who have like a lot of emotions and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I used to when I was younger just think like, why don't people just have control of their emotions? You know, like why can't they just like keep a grip on them like how I do with mine? But then I began to realize like, you know what? Maybe it's because people don't feel their emotions as strongly. Like I don't feel my emotions as strongly as other people do. And not only that,
Mm,
their emotions are probably like so grandiose that they literally like maybe if I experienced the same heightened level of emotion that they do, then I would also be having these outbursts and acting in ways like that are erratic and that I would find erratic
mhm,
and
mhm.
distasteful. And so
Yeah.
I can't blame them because my like emotions are not like that, whatever. It's like I feel them and I acknowledge them, but they never will control me. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm the same guy who like even when it comes to like stuff like jealousy, it's like the things that I do to number one, avoid envy and jealousy, but then also number two, like transmutate it into even pleasure at times in some form of like compersion. It's like, wow, like, yeah, like I'm not, I really do well with like not letting such negative emotions like get to me. Like I've helped a lot of exes with like I've helped two exes in their relationship with the partner that they cheated on me with. And it's
Mhm.
like to other people like, oh my gosh, like how would you even do that? Like I just would want to stab them or something like that each time I spoke to them. But in my head, I'm like, well, it wasn't right what they did, and it did hurt me. But like I still want them to be happy, I guess.
Mhm.
And I can't make my ex like me in this way. So
Mhm.
it's like it's more like facing the facts of the situation. And once I face it, then it's like I don't care anymore to the point where now it's like, all right, well, since I don't care anymore, then I can help you because I'm in like this neutral place where it's like, sure, you and your new partner are having these issues. Well, all right, tell me what's going on. Let, let's figure this out. And
Mhm.
whatever. Um,
Hmm. Hmm, hmm,
Yeah,
hmm.
but I'm sure, but I can understand why a lot of other people. No, I can't even be friends with my exes, like because it feels so strong for them that they just can't let it go,
Yeah. Ah,
and it's not their fault.
yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
even a
yeah,
bad
yeah.
thing, and
Yeah,
so yeah, that's the
yeah.
main thing that I'm saying. It's like, oh, like you can't help that that's how you are, and so it's like I need to hold
Yeah,
space for
so
that.
Yeah, and so people who experience really strong emotions, a way to cope or make the emotion less strong is to actually label the person as stupid, immoral, or evil because it takes the edge off. Because the emotion is able to be at least contained. Whereas if you don't have
hmm.
labels, that the emotion's still going to be there in the full intensity because you have to fully accept that a situation is complex. Um,
Yeah,
and that's incredibly painful. So
yeah,
yeah. Whereas like my emotions are relatively like yours, Denzel, so very rarely. I can usually um I I feel the other person's emotion, so even if I am feeling emotion, I'm able
Mhm.
to like change it to make it more like pleasing or nice for the other person.
Right,
So I sometimes wonder why people can't do it back for me. There's
right,
almost a
hmm,
why do you have to show your genuine emotions is sometimes
yeah,
the
I
question.
yeah,
was wondering the same thing. Yeah, where it's like, are FI users weird? Right? Where it's like, are we just like nuts that we just can't put a cap on our on these strong emotions, you know?
and I
So I
guess
wonder
for
that for a
them,
second.
the higher stacks would be like, why do we have to do that anyway? It's the F
Yeah.
users that are weird. Like, why are you putting a cap on that? Like, just express how you feel. It's be authentic. Like you're not being authentic. I know people who have said these kinds of things to me. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, because
It's a
like
different investment. There's got to be like this, like it's very powerful feelings. It's this
mhm,
energy, you
mhm,
know.
mhm. Yeah,
So where the heck is it going?
yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's
And
like, oh
it just makes
no.
me think of the gamma quadra, actually,
Mhm,
that these kind of feelings are like they do end up amounting into real world things, and that are admired by people, and like a friend who's an ESFP,
mhm,
and their performance on stage unparalleled.
mhm,
So would that go away with, if they didn't have these feelings, and if you don't have if we're making the assumption that like shame is highly correlated with this like a strong like need to express this like discontent with the other,
mhm,
aka like strong feelings, and FI, we're kind of correlating it with FI a little bit.
mhm,
um with these great works of art, accomplishments, achievements, are they even possible without? I think it makes me think of the space race, where
mhm,
we were pushed by intense competition of this other, there's this confrontation between these two entities, and we went to the moon for it.
mhm,
Would we have ever gone to the moon that quickly? Like maybe eventually, but would
mhm,
we have?
That's a good question. And if you think about INTPs, if they're really out of touch with their FI, they actually have a hard time motivating themselves to do anything. And so, in a sense, FI is a really good fuel source. And it's
Fuel
from
source, yeah.
within, too.
We all had this thinking moment.
right.
Yeah.
It's like that
And I think
moment at the dinner table, right? Where it's like there's silence at the table because the food's so good. That's a good sign.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
there's, yeah. And oftentimes, like with TI users who are very out of touch with their FI, you can actually, I think you can create synthetic FI. So you can actually, when a TI user has deduced down their beliefs down to like a very core, like, okay, I basically disproved everything else. This is actually the only case. There is a level of like emotional conviction that can also then form around that. Um, that creates a steady source of energy.
Hmm.
But I find that it takes a TI user, if they're very out of touch with their FI, a very long time to reach that point where they have their own sorts of mobile energy within themselves, just for themselves.
Yeah.
It's like you'll meet ENFJs who have been so people pleasery or others focused that they suddenly go all the way to the opposite realm to their TI. So they're like, okay, I'm just going to eat dinners all by myself, go to events like Circus du Soleil by myself, watch movies by myself, screw people, I'm going to go on a mountain by myself. And so that's them, like they've deduced from their TI, okay, it doesn't make sense if I people please too much. It doesn't make sense if I do this. Therefore, the only thing that makes sense is actually if I take care of myself. Then they actually form an FI conviction around, um, oh, therefore, gotta live by this. And they create that synthetic FI fuel source. But
Yeah. Yeah.
for you, you can access it immediately, which is so much more helpful.
I think it's wild in the beginning for sure. I think that's why we find so many of these protagonist characters are in animes and stuff as ISFPs. There's just this like driving force of energy coming from these people, and intense conviction.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And it's almost like just adding on to the shame part that I will, and the transmuting part where I'll take the shame and I'll say, one day I'll prove you wrong. Then I take other shame. One day I'll prove you wrong. And then it amounts to this thing where it's like it strengthens your force, your inner drive, because now you've got something to push against and to show. And now it's even more important it's not just like a thing that is an idea. You have these voices now, so that are active and have kind of become part of your engine.
Yeah, and you have that ability to turn lots of things into fuel. You're a car that can operate off of many different types of fuel.
Put fuel in, put jet fuel in, put hamburgers in.
Because it comes from
Yeah.
a place of self-belief. You have like an FI
Self-belief, yeah.
sense of self-belief.
Yeah. But now, okay, so I do have a question for you guys. Because we've kind of made a couple leaps of like, okay, FI, definitely uses shame or can use shame, right? And it's kind of this like explosive kind of shame. But I'm sure there's other forms of it, right? Where for FE, uh, is there a brand of shame or flavor of shame that we haven't addressed?
FE shame, there's two kinds. Like an FE user can internalize a sense of shame from not feeling like they can relationship well. So you see this with INTPs a lot, but I think an FE user with failed attempts to relationally connect can feel like they can notice that, oh, the things that I say land on a person a certain way, and therefore it creates this result. And so I'm responsible for how people emotionally feel. And I feel ashamed of myself for not being able to make people feel good. But then on the opposite end, like an FE user can produce shame, as in noticing that your individuality affects other people and feeling like you're being selfish. So I want to shame you for like being selfish because you're like, it's almost like, let's say an FE user sees you having a reaction and it's impacting other people. And so it's like, wow, how selfish of you to actually let your emotions like make everyone else have a harder time. So, because and I think that's generally even TJs can feel that way if someone is too much in TRFI. It's like you're actually overly being individualistic and it's negatively impacting other people. Or like the implication of the future of these people too, in a way where you don't want to. Anyways, I'm stating the obvious here. My apologies.
No, it's making me think. It's making me think because I'm trying to. I think in typology, it's hard to stay away from classifying different subtypes of things. So it's just making me think of what's the subtype of shame that comes from FE. And
Effie's gonna
yeah,
shame.
this might be like information that you already know, right? But to me, it feels like it's a fresh new perspective because I think I'm more like familiar with the FI kind.
Yeah,
Maybe.
an FE user is more likely to shame you in a socially acceptable way that like gets past everyone. So like they find a way to like smoothly integrate it in how they talk, and it's kind of like everyone passes a test except for a few people, and they're
Yeah.
flaunting their high scores in
Interesting.
high school, and then it's in this way where they're showing like FE social approval of a certain way of being, whereas like everything else, like this is like the ESFJ mean girl in high school.
Yeah. I wonder if that's even more like that's equally as powerful as the kind of shame from FI we were talking about because it's almost like this individual, like you and me. I have a personal issue with you, and this one-on-one kind of thing. But then,
No.
like with FE, it's like group setting,
Yeah,
that kind of pressure of like, you are not like us.
yeah, like,
Like
and it's by
as a collective, which is, whew,
yeah.
that's intense to me. That's intense.
Yeah, it's kind of like with FE, they're imagining the best way to respond or the best action to do that'll meet the most amount of needs or feelings. And
Yeah.
sometimes because they're so quick to act, they might assume wrongly without like collecting enough individual data. Like let's say an FI user is having a unique reaction to a scenario. The FE's user's like, people typically react this way to this thing. And so I'm going to respond as if I'm like happy for them. But the FI user's like, oh, I actually wanted you to actually understand what I'm going through because it feels like you're shaming me for not being like you. So it's like a misinterpretation because I don't think like TE users aren't always trying to shame FE users or feelers based off of their like need to tell you that looks like shame. They're just like trying to mobilize you. So it's like shame is usually a byproduct of unskillful interaction on both ends.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Because like we've kind of talked about how too much is too much. The internal shame, it seems like group consensus wise, we've come to the conclusion that internal, it's if it comes from you, that's better than if it's coming from someone else, like outside. Yeah, then I don't know which one is worse. They're probably equal because one is almost like being mobilized, or both are being mobilized. One is like results driven, like mobilizing because they want on this like specific thing, and then the other one is like this filter that everyone passes through, and it is informative in that, oh, I'm doing something that I don't pass through this filter, so it is like feedback about a specific kind of engagement also, but it's like catching more people are passing through this thing. And it kind of makes you look around like, oh, is anyone passing through also? Or am I the only one stuck on this other side of this filter, you know? It makes you reflect in a different way because you're kind of looking outward now and you're like, oh, I see all these other people and they're passing through the filter, but I'm stuck. Can't get past this thing. And everyone's laughing now. That's an extreme example, but yeah, whereas like the interaction you had, Joyce, is very personal, where it's like very confrontational. You're not employing it upon yourself. Like in the FE example, it's like being said to the group, but it's like that moment where it's like, oh, they're actually talking about me, you know, but it's not like said directly, maybe. Or maybe it is said directly because I've kind of seen the whole like my husband will do this, he's INTP. He'll do this thing where it's like he'll point out how that's different from how everyone else is doing it, you know. So but yeah, it's one is like more like you can see these other people who are different from you. And then the other one is like this like super intense one-on-one interaction. So yeah, definitely very different flavors of shame. And I don't know which one is worse. I don't know which one is better.
Yeah, no, both of them are definitely hurt for me.
Yeah.
I know that. But
Yeah.
I think I don't know which one. I feel like FE, I think, does things in a way that's like it's not going to allow you as much room to be able to attack it because it's all subtle. TE is
Plausible
so,
deniability.
yeah. It's like I see what you're doing. It's like, what do you mean? I'm just being nice to all of these people here, and like boom boom. Well, I get it. You aren't being as nice to you're being nice to all of these people. You're treating them all special and everything to kind of highlight the things that you like about them that you dislike about me or something like that.
And it's like, no, that's your
Ooh,
your commentary to you're telling yourself that,
yeah.
you
Even though
know.
that could
And
be
you're like,
true. Yeah. Yeah, but it's like I'm not gonna allow you to think that it's something like
But you know
yeah.
what? I kind of like that technique though, because sometimes people need a good smack. And because sometimes they're just like outrageously obnoxious. And it reminds me of like there's like this video of, and I always think about it. I don't know, I just keep on revisiting this video in my mind, but there's like this video of this dog or mama dog, and she's with her litter of puppies, and all the puppies are kind of teething at this point, so she doesn't want them to feed off of her. But they come to her anyways, and she's an experienced uh dog mom, and they're all coming and crowding her, and then all of a sudden she barks really loud, like a very like stern no bark is what it sounded like. And then all of the puppies just laid down on the ground and they calmed down. They weren't like crazy and frenetic anymore. It was just oh, okay, all right, noted. We'll chill out.
Yeah.
So I think it was good in that situation, but it's like, yeah, in a way it's like they were kind of like they were being disciplined, to just like be better.
Yeah, it's like the tuning fork. Like if you use shame hard enough, like doom, you can make all the other notes be in line as well if they're all in chaos.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you heard it from Lilette. If you don't like this video, she's gonna smack you because it's outrageous if you don't like it. So.
We're just ending all of the videos with like just a crazy, outrageous statement. So yeah, there you go.
What's her conclusive wrap-up statement then?
Well, choice.
Well, it seems like shame, it is a form of expressing yourself in the moment, and sometimes people can take that in the wrong way, no matter who that is. And it seems like shame is compounded if you have an initial feeling of insecurity inside yourself. So typically you'll hear something and it might be unskillfully said, and you might be baffled as to why that person said it. And human beings want to read between the lines and find a narrative between it. And so it seems like shame is an accidental consequence of many factors. Like someone will say what they truly feel and it'll result in shame. Someone will try to placate the group, it'll result in shame. Someone tries to express their TI truth, like Denzel or I, and it causes shame in the other person because they take it personally in some way. And so I feel like shame is caused when we're baffled by another person's communication and it's either cold or detached or stern. And then we start to read between the lines like they're trying to say something about us or say something about the relationship. So if you don't want to feel shame, then be like Lilette and see everything as fuel. So we're all gonna just chug along. Like Lilette's the new innovative method of metabolizing shame. And then now you got me and Denzel thinking about how we can incorporate your mindset into our life. So we're kind of inspired by you.
Yeah, I'm like, huh. Very big thing for me to process now, Lilette. Very big. Thank you.
I think it's been really interesting just seeing how like we've analyzed many different situations at this point. A lot of different nuanced situations where of varying degrees. And there are some emotions that are easier to talk about than others. This one is complex. And with that, the more complex an emotion is, like something like love, for example, and shame kind of touches on self-love in a way, or one's own identity. Like that's a very strong, complex emotion. It's a relationship you have with another person. It's a relationship you have with yourself. Like how your conviction with what you're doing. Are you doing the right thing? Are you going to continue doing the right thing? Should you continue doing the right thing? Or not should you continue doing the right thing, but like should you continue doing that thing? Sorry. But yeah, it's just it is a almost like it's an experience that can trigger growth and trigger something new, like finding that this guy is nice, like a new insight. That's a new insight.
Yeah. Do you know what
So
I
yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I deeply admire about you, Lilette? So, like, what I find so beautiful about you is like I learned that you asked yourself subconsciously or consciously, like, do I care about this person's opinion? Do I care about what this person thinks? And I think that's one of the filters that protects you from from internalizing the shame. Like you'll feel the shame and then you'll be like, do I care about this person? Mm, like there's some level of self-respect you have in the way that you deal with people being negative towards you that I'm like, could benefit from that level of self-respect, like that deep level of, do I care? Is it important? You're like, nah.
In the same way that I find great respect in your ability to control those emotions and think about someone else's. Like you're basically thinking about two things at the same time. Two playing fields where I am just playing in one and I do badly at it. So I find it really impressive as well because it's I don't even think I could do that at the same time, to be honest. That's a lot of information for me. So having that level of control, and I think control is one of those things that is I find I try to strive for. Uh and the fact that it's almost like innate, for like you just came out of the box in that way. I find just truly amazing. So yeah, yeah, that's what I'd say about that.
And so, on that note, thank you everyone for watching. Until next time, stay sharp.
Stay sharp.
また夜が明ければお別れ夢は時幻に